When Roseanne first hit American television in 1988, it wasn't just another sitcom. It was a mirror of working-class life, raw and unapologetically real. And at the heart of it was John Goodman, the blue-collar father figure everyone could relate to. For nearly a decade, he stood beside Roseanne Barr, both on-screen and off, through laughter, chaos, and revolution. But behind the jokes and record-breaking ratings, something darker was growing. Tension, betrayal, and one shocking decision that destroyed it all. Now, John Goodman finally tells what truly brought it to an end, and why he knows it will never be the same again. The rise of an unlikely hero. Before the world knew him as Dan Connor, John Goodman was just a quiet kid from Afton, Missouri, a boy shaped by loss, loneliness, and the constant struggle to belong. Born on June 20th, 1952, he was only 2 years old when tragedy struck. His father, Leslie Goodman, suffered a fatal heart attack, leaving behind a young wife and 3 children. John's mother, Virginia, worked tirelessly as a waitress and saleswoman to keep the family afloat, often juggling 2 jobs just to put food on the table. But emotional wounds don't heal as quickly as financial ones. John later admitted that his father's absence left a void that nothing could quite fill. "I grew up afraid of everything," he once confessed. "Afraid of being alone, afraid of not being good enough." At school, life wasn't much easier. His weight made him an easy target for bullies, and he struggled to fit in. Instead of friends, he found comfort in stories, comic books, especially. The heroes of DC and Marvel became his imaginary mentors. He admired Green Lantern's courage, the Atom's intelligence, Captain America's loyalty. Those characters taught him something vital, that strength isn't always about winning. Sometimes it's just about getting up again. The Boy Scouts gave him a similar sense of order and purpose. He thrived under the structure and discipline, learning leadership, teamwork, and resilience, qualities that would later define his career. By high school, Goodman's size finally worked in his favor. He became a standout football player, a powerhouse lineman with raw talent and determination. His performance earned him a scholarship to Southwest Missouri State University, now known as Missouri State. It seemed like a dream come true for a small-town kid who had always felt overlooked. But dreams can collapse in an instant. In 1970, during his first year, Goodman tore his ACL, a devastating injury that ended his football career before it truly began. The loss hit him harder than he expected. Without football, he had no direction, no plan, no identity. Then, almost by accident, he wandered into the university's drama department. A friend convinced him to audition for a play. He got a small part, just a few lines, but something happened that night on stage. The rush of performing, the laughter of the audience, the strange magic of becoming someone else, it filled him with a sense of purpose he hadn't felt since his father's death. "I was smitten," Goodman later said. "I knew I'd found what I wanted to do for the rest of my life." At Missouri State, he studied drama alongside future stars like Kathleen Turner and Tess Harper. Surrounded by talent and passion, Goodman found a community that accepted him. Acting gave him not only a career, but a sense of belonging. When he graduated in 1975, he took a leap of faith and boarded a bus to New York City with just $1,000 borrowed from his brother. His mother was terrified. "She thought I'd get mugged or starve," he recalled. But Goodman wasn't afraid anymore. New York in the mid-1970s was gritty and dangerous, but it was also alive with artistic energy. He rented a cheap apartment in Hell's Kitchen, a neighborhood that matched his own rough edges. The early years were hard. Endless auditions, constant rejection, and long nights working odd jobs just to survive. He waited tables, sold tickets, and even worked one chaotic night as a nightclub bouncer before realizing he wasn't built for violence. Still, he refused to quit. His breakthrough came not in Hollywood, but on stage. Goodman threw himself into off-Broadway productions, dinner theater, and small-town plays across the country. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest work, and it was building something. Each role, no matter how small, sharpened his instincts and deepened his understanding of humanity. By the early 1980s, the man who once thought he'd never fit in had become one of the most reliable actors in the New York theater scene. He didn't know it yet, but every line, every rehearsal, every rejection was quietly preparing him for the role that would define his life, the role of a working-class husband named Dan Connor, the birth of Dan Connor. By 1987, John Goodman had spent over a decade working in obscurity. He had appeared in off-Broadway productions, regional theater, and a handful of small film roles that barely paid the bills. He wasn't a star, not yet, but he had something Hollywood couldn't ignore: authenticity. Goodman's warmth, his timing, his ability to make ordinary people feel extraordinary. It all set him apart. And that's exactly what ABC needed when they began casting for a new sitcom built around a brash, working-class comedian named Roseanne Barr. The concept of Roseanne was simple but revolutionary. It wasn't about glamorous families in big houses. It was about real people who struggled, argued, loved, and laughed through everyday life. It was messy, raw, and deeply American. The producers had found their Roseanne, but they were still searching for someone to play her husband, a believable blue-collar man with heart. Dozens auditioned, but no one felt right. Then Goodman walked in. He was performing Antony and Cleopatra in Los Angeles when ABC called him in for the audition. The moment he met Roseanne, the chemistry was undeniable. She was blunt, sarcastic, and tough. He was steady, quick-witted, and effortlessly genuine. During their test scene, Goodman slid into character so naturally that Roseanne immediately barked, "Shut up!" without missing a beat. Goodman laughed, tossed it right back at her, and the room erupted. Producer Marcy Carsey later said that within 30 seconds, everyone knew that was Dan Connor. When Roseanne premiered on October 18, 1988, it was an instant hit. The show didn't just attract viewers, it captivated them. Within weeks, it climbed to the top of the Nielsen ratings, and by the end of its first season, it was the second most watched show in America, averaging over 36 million viewers per week. Audiences saw themselves in the Connors, the bills, the kids, the arguments, the exhaustion. And Goodman's portrayal of Dan was the heart of it all. He wasn't a perfect dad, but he was real. Patient one moment, stubborn the next, but always grounded in love. Behind the scenes, the dynamic between Goodman and Roseanne mirrored their on-screen marriage: playful, passionate, and sometimes explosive. Roseanne Barr was a comedic force, but also fiercely protective of her vision. She wanted creative control, often clashing with producers and writers. Early in the show's run, she had a notorious feud with the series creator, Matt Williams, over authorship and direction. When Roseanne threatened to quit, Goodman, along with Laurie Metcalf and George Clooney, sided with her. Their support led to Williams's departure, marking the beginning of Roseanne's full command of the show. It was a risky move. On one hand, Roseanne's instincts kept the show sharp and relatable. On the other, her dominance made the set increasingly tense. Tom Arnold, her then-boyfriend and later husband, began influencing decisions, and his presence created new divisions within the team. Still, Goodman held the middle ground. While others came and went, he stayed focused, balancing humor with professionalism. His consistency paid off. Between 1989 and 1995, Goodman received 7 consecutive Emmy nominations for Outstanding Lead Actor in a Comedy Series. Though he never won an Emmy for Roseanne, he did take home the Golden Globe for Best Actor in 1993, joking in his acceptance speech, "I'd like to thank my personal trainer, but I don't have one." That humility, that quiet self-awareness, was exactly what made him so beloved. Goodman's performance didn't just make Dan Connor famous, it changed how television portrayed fathers. For decades, TV dads had been distant, polished, or unrealistically perfect. Dan was none of that. He was sweaty, tired, funny, and fiercely loyal, a man who loved his family even when he didn't know how to show it. Viewers across America saw their own fathers in him. But as the ratings soared, the weight of fame began to take its toll. Roseanne was becoming one of the most powerful women in Hollywood, and the pressure to maintain success was enormous. The set, once full of laughter, started to feel heavy with expectation and exhaustion. Goodman often found himself caught between loyalty to his co-star and the need for peace. He once said that working with Roseanne was like being on a roller coaster with no brakes. The highs were exhilarating, but the lows were unpredictable. And though Roseanne became a cultural phenomenon, the chaos behind the curtain hinted at a storm that was only just beginning to form. Behind the laughter, conflict, and consequence. The 1990s were the golden years of Roseanne, but behind that success lay constant turmoil. Roseanne Barr's personal life became inseparable from the show. Her marriage to Tom Arnold and his increasing influence on production created tension among cast and crew. Many, including Goodman, felt the atmosphere change from collaboration to chaos. Barr became unpredictable, sometimes rewriting scripts at the last minute, other times alienating longtime writers. Goodman, known for his patience, often acted as the peacemaker. He admired Barr's talent, but struggled with her volatility. "She could be the funniest person you ever met," he later recalled, "and the hardest person to work with the next day." By the mid-90s, both stars were exhausted. The series that once united them now felt heavy with expectation and fatigue. Still, Goodman's loyalty remained. He often defended Barr publicly, even when critics mocked her. When the show finally ended in 1997 after 9 seasons, it was bittersweet. Goodman was proud of what they'd achieved, proud that they'd changed television forever, but part of him knew they had burned out. After Roseanne, Goodman focused on film, proving his range beyond comedy. His partnership with Joel and Ethan Coen produced unforgettable performances in Barton Fink, The Big Lebowski, and Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? In each role, he balanced menace with humanity, a reflection, perhaps, of the complexity he had learned working alongside Roseanne Barr. But even as his career flourished, his personal life fell apart. Goodman's drinking worsened through the 2000s. "I was drinking at work," he confessed later. "It was embarrassing. I had to stop." In 2007, he entered rehab and got sober, crediting his wife and daughter for saving him. It was a turning point, and in a strange way, the beginning of closure for the man who had once embodied Dan Connor. A decade later, fate would bring him back to that world. Only this time, tragedy was waiting. The revival and the fall. In March 2018, Roseanne returned after 21 years. Nostalgia met new relevance, and fans were eager to see Dan and Roseanne again. The premiere drew 18 million viewers, making it the highest-rated comedy broadcast in 4 years. Goodman described it as like putting on an old pair of shoes. For a moment, it felt like the magic had returned. But that moment didn't last. On May 29, 2018, Roseanne Barr posted a tweet comparing Valerie Jarrett, a former advisor to President Obama, to the Muslim Brotherhood and Planet of the Apes. The backlash was immediate. A BC acted within hours. Channing Dungay, then president of ABC Entertainment, released a statement calling Barr's words abhorrent, repugnant, and inconsistent with our values. The show was canceled instantly. Goodman was blindsided. The cast found out through the news. Millions of dollars were lost overnight. But for Goodman, the financial hit wasn't the hardest part. It was emotional. After decades of working alongside Barr, he now watched her destroy everything they had built in a single tweet. In the days following the scandal, Goodman remained silent. When paparazzi caught him in New Orleans, he quietly said, "I'd rather say nothing than cause more trouble." But months later, he finally spoke. In an interview with the Sunday Times, Goodman defended Barr. "I know for a fact she's not a racist," he said. It was a statement that shocked many, but for Goodman it wasn't about politics, it was about loyalty. Still, that loyalty couldn't undo the damage. Roseanne was over, not because of ratings or creative decline, but because of words that could never be taken back. The Connors and the silence that followed. In October 2018, ABC announced a spin-off called The Connors. Roseanne Barr's character was written out, dead from an opioid overdose. Goodman returned as Dan Connor, joined by Laurie Metcalf, Sarah Gilbert, and other original cast members. Many doubted the show could survive without its namesake, but against all odds, The Connors became a modest success, running for 7 seasons until 2025. Goodman poured himself into the role again, playing a widowed Dan with quiet grief and resilience. Off camera, though, his relationship with Barr was broken beyond repair. In interviews, he admitted they hadn't spoken since her firing. "We haven't talked for about 7 or 8 years," he told The Hollywood Reporter. "I'd rather doubt if she wants to talk to me." Barr, for her part, confirmed the distance. In 2024, she told Fox News Digital, "No, I'm not friends with none of them. They're all in the past. We don't talk." She even lashed out at the remaining cast, saying they messed it all up with their greed and stupidity. Still, Goodman spoke only with warmth. "She made me laugh, and I made her laugh," he said. It was a special time. That mix of affection and regret captured everything, the brilliance and the tragedy of Roseanne. By 2025, as The Connors ended after 7 seasons, Goodman reflected on its legacy. "It's hard," he said to people. "I'm old and resistant to change. It went by so fast. It feels like it started 2 weeks ago." He understood now what few did, that Roseanne wasn't just a show. It was a mirror of a country, of a time when people saw themselves in the Connors. And though it ended in scandal, the truth was simpler and sadder. It ended because people changed, because fame broke friendships, because some things can't be repaired. In the end, John Goodman never blamed Roseanne, not fully. He only mourned what was lost: laughter, trust, and something that once felt like family. Do you think Roseanne could ever return in any form? Or is its legacy forever sealed by controversy? Let us know what you think in the comments. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more true Hollywood stories.